Okay, folks, Sam here, and I'm doing this update here on Sunday, October 4th at about 4:30 on whether or not Joe Biden is in danger of getting the coronavirus. And you see I have his chart here. This is Biden's chart. This is Trump's chart, but this is Biden's chart, and we're going to be looking at the same transits. And also Biden's dashas here, just to look and see whether or not he's seems to be in jeopardy or not. So I talked about when I did a election video on the charts of Trump, Pence, Biden, and Kamala Harris. When I looked at Biden's dashas and Trump's dashas, that Biden's dashas were a lot better for victory in the election, mainly because since he started Jupiter Rahu, which is where he is now, Jupiter Rahu started right as he got the nomination. So his ascendancy has been really, one of the things that you look at when you're making a prediction like this is what does the cycle look like that he is in right now? And again, like I said with Trump lately, since Trump started Jupiter Saturn, which is the beginning of last year, we have a track record. Since the beginning of 2019, Trump has just been losing and losing and losing and losing. He did get impeached. He wasn't removed for it, but still, it's just been a very hard dasha for him. Now, again, Trump has got a deadly virus that he has the best care in the world, but it's very serious. So again, I said, a while ago that this would be intense. That this is an intense time for Trump. Again, before any of this happened, but since I did those first predictions when I did the charts of the four candidates, I said then that it's just such a better time for Biden just in general in his life. And again, since then even, we've had one scandal after another with Trump. We had his family members come out against him, the Woodward book and the tapes of him saying that he knew about COVID the whole time. We just had that big tax release thing where, he's not paying any taxes. He had a disastrous debate. He gets COVID. I mean, again, this is the backdrop upon which Trump is supposedly going to come back and win. I showed you polling where Trump is behind in every battleground state that he needs to win. And he needs to make up 4, 5, 6 points in most of those states, at least. We got 30 days left. And in the backdrop of getting this fatal illness that hopefully he can not die from, he's going to come back and win somehow, right? So what's most likely, and again, I said this also a few months ago, is that his dashas and all that do not look very good, but he's going to do what he can to try to, quote, steal it, you might say. And this is why that's what he's been doing. Defunding the post office, coming out endlessly saying that the only way he could lose is if it's rigged, and turning this into something where he doesn't want to honor the election results. Why would you say that the election results are going to be rigged unless you thought you were going to lose? Would he say, hey, guess what, folks, I'm going to win the election, but it's going to be rigged? Of course not. So Trump also knows all of this. So his dashas are not very good right now at all for these things. Again, I'm not saying he's going to lose. I haven't done a final analysis yet, but I also haven't changed. From my point of view, he's not going to get enough votes. And the only way he could, quote, win is if something in the courts, something like what he's talking about happens. Because, again, you can just listen to what's coming out of his mouth with Trump. That's what he thinks, that's what he's hoping is going to pull it out for him. Something where he can delegitimize the vote so much that later it can wind up in the courts and somehow he can, quote, win. So Biden, on the other hand, his dashas are much more favorable. He's in Jupiter Rahu, and again, since the Rahu dasha started at the end of April this year, he became the nominee. So again, you look at the difference between Trump, which started Jupiter Saturn last year and has had nothing but really a lot of difficulty. Again, just sort of, besieged by his enemies, which Saturn is his 6th house ruler. By contrast, Biden just went into this Jupiter Rahu And since he did, he was catapulted into the nomination, almost like brought back from the dead, kind of, almost literally. Which is sort of a very Rahu thing, all of a sudden, bam, out of nowhere. So we're looking at him in the context of these dashas, of this dasha of Jupiter, Rahu, and the third level is Jupiter, between now and early next year. So in Jupiter, Rahu, Jupiter, so we have to look at Rahu and what does Rahu rule? And does it make him vulnerable? Now, again, Rahu definitely is a malefic, and it definitely makes him vulnerable. And I said, again, even when I did the initial analysis, that the one scary thing about the Rahu for him that I saw with his dashas is that Rahu rules, let me make this bigger. Rahu rules his ruling planet Mars in the 12th house. This is not good. Again, I'm not saying he's going to get COVID, but what I'm saying is that Rahu is very unpredictable. It's definitely a wild card. It's definitely shows things like a loss or losing, especially unexpected. And particularly if it's ruling the 12th lord, ruling the first lord in the 12th. Again, the first house has to do with literally with our health and with our physical, persona, like literally, our body and what we're doing. And you see it here in his 12th house. And again, it's ruling Rahu because Rahu is in Swati Nakshatra. And the other thing that Rahu rules is Ketu in his 4th house, in Shatabishak Nakshatra. Now let me tell you what I think this means. And in fact, we've already been seeing it the whole time. I think what this means is, because the 12th house literally is how things can disappear, it also shows us alone. It also shows us by ourselves. It also shows that rather than being out there in the public, which is the 10th and the 11th houses, we're off by ourselves. It also would definitely refer to things like being quarantined. Now, I'm not saying quarantine because he's sick, like Trump is now quarantined. And Trump is supposed to be forcibly taken off and be put by himself. That's the negative quality of the 12th house. The 12th house is literally also things like jail and prison, where you've violated something and now you're put off by yourself. Or maybe a medical quarantine, like we see with Trump now. And by the way, in Trump's chart, his Saturn is in his 12th house. This is Trump's chart. So you see that due to a medical reason, he's been put into his 12th house and taken out of circulation. Biden, but it also shows where we do that voluntarily, where we're doing it out of a sense of caution, out of a sense of literally like a quarantine situation. So when I say that we've already seen this with Biden already, just think of the campaign rhetoric. Just think of the stuff that Trump has always been saying. And what people have been saying, even about Biden, this whole campaign time. Oh, he's hiding out in his house. He's hiding in his house. He's in his basement. Well, that criticism would literally be like Mars in the 12th, ruled by Rahu. This is literally how you would, if you were to criticize someone like that, you might say, oh, he just wants to hide out in his basement. Again, but this is actually showing that the same thing is happening, but not because he's gotten COVID, but because he's aware that he could catch it, and he's smart and saying, I don't want to get out there and risk it for myself or risk it for others. So I'm spending a lot more time by myself, even though I would normally be out campaigning, due to the COVID. So we can also see how Jupiter Rahu, which started at the end of April, has shown that Biden has been alone and by himself a lot of that time, because Rahu rules his Mars in the 12th. But it's a voluntary quarantine. It's a voluntary solitude due to the dangers of COVID. So we already see where that's been happening with his Rahu in the 12th. Again, Rahu also rules Ketu in the 4th, and the 4th house is also our home. And again, Ketu in the 4th also shows where we, with Rahu ruling Ketu in the 4th, shows where we can go off into our home and be, in our own environment, concentrating on our own work or whatever it might be. So what I see, I'm doing this case study because we can already see how his Rahu ruling Mars in the 12th is showing him by himself and in solitude already in a positive way. Because again, you have to understand with astrology, everything has a positive and negative, quote, possibility. And the thing that I said back when I did the case study a couple months ago was that the thing that concerns me about his Rahu dasha is that it rules his Mars in the 12th house, which is his ruling planet, which could show some unexpected thing that could happen. Among them is a health concern. There's no question. But we know now that he's had a health concern. He's had a health scare being around Trump, who probably had COVID at the time of the last debate. Biden has now tested twice, and it's come back negative. 1 second. Biden will keep up healthy precautions, and I don't think he's going to contract it. Part of it also is because we already see what he does. He's smart. He doesn't take it for granted. He's not going to create these super spreader events and bring together a bunch of people. He's going to keep doing what he's been doing the whole time, which has been extremely effective. Biden is ahead by at least about 7 points nationally and way ahead in all of the battleground states. Regardless of the fact that Trump has been out there doing these super spreader rallies and all this stuff, he hasn't gained in the polls. Biden has been doing what is smart, what is strategic, what is intelligent, and he's winning. No question. And there's no reason for him to stop doing that. He's supposedly going to be traveling a little bit more, but he's going to take the right precautions, and I don't think he's going to get it. Again, one of the things that, and I'm going to talk a little bit more, especially about his Navamsha chart and a few other things in a minute, but again, these are the fact that we're already seeing the danger, and we've seen it since Jupiter Rahu started, because right when Jupiter Rahu started, we had just gone into COVID lockdown. This was about a month and a half after the COVID lockdown is when Biden went into Jupiter Rahu, and by that time he had the nomination like locked up. And that Rahu ruling his Mars in the 12th was already showing the effects of what we're seeing right now, which is, again, being by yourself, not being out as much. That's what the 12th house is. It's solitude. It's also like introspection, like yogis and monks and people going off in solitude by themselves is the 12th house. But it could be solitude because of something we've done wrong, like, for example, prison, hospitals. These are also 12th house things. And again, right now, Trump is in a hospital. He's in Jupiter Saturn, and his Saturn is in the 12th house, which is a hospital. Again, Biden's ruling planet also goes into the 12th house, and it's being ruled by Rahu. So, and by the way, let's just look at a few things. Biden has spent quite a bit of time in hospitals with people dying, like his wife and his young daughter and his son Beau. So you can see his ruling planet is in the 12th house. And it shows, again, the ruling planet, which in his case is Mars because it rules Scorpio. Joe Biden is well acquainted with hospitals. He's well acquainted with loved ones dying. He's been very sensitized because of that. And you see it all the time. Often he's so emotional, and you see it so real and sincere when he talks about his son Beau recently dying, the young life that he had when he was sworn in as a senator, and his wife and daughter died in the car accident. You know, this is a man who's been sensitized by tragedy, and he knows hospitals, and he doesn't disrespect them. He knows the preciousness of life because he's lost a lot of it in his lifetime. So he's not going to fool around this stuff. He has a very healthy respect for these things. And, by contrast, if you contrast his Saturn and Trump's Saturn, which is the healthy respect for life, Biden's got Saturn in his 7th house. This is why he's lost a lot of people. And it's in Taurus, which is a very powerful sign for Saturn. Trump, by example, has Saturn in the 12th house in Cancer, which is not as dignified for sure, at least in that sense. It's in great enemy dignity, and its ruler is debilitated. And there's things about Trump's Saturn, which is playing with fire a lot. Biden isn't doing that. He's not going to do that. So the thing is that we can see the fact that he's already using that Rahu in a way that is empowering. It's the empowered quality of Rahu that's actually been advancing his campaign also. Again, because he went into Jupiter Rahu right when he became the candidate, and right away, just given the situation with COVID, Rahu again activates his K2 in the 4th. 4th house is our home. He went into his home. He's been in Delaware. He hasn't been going out all over the place out of respect for the COVID. All of his public statements and even the convention and all that has all been very controlled. And again, he's been ridiculed for it. I mean, one of the big things, Joe Biden is coming out of this whole process looking much stronger than most of us thought. Oh, the frail old man, he's lost a step, he's this and that. All of these mocking posts of him with his mask on throughout the summer as all the mask deniers and COVID deniers just really kind of ridiculing, oh, the Democrats, this is all they can do. Look, by the way, again, I'm not a huge oh, I love Biden so much, blah, blah. All I'm saying is that as we're looking at it now, Biden has been redeemed with what he was doing. A lot in the Democrat establishment are saying he needs to be doing more if he's going to beat Trump. He's too passive. What's Joe doing? He's old and in his bed and in his basement. He needs to get out more. You know what? He's been prudent and careful around all of this. And taking the criticism of this, and this Rahu his ruling planet in the 12th has shown exactly what Biden has been doing. Regardless of all that stuff going on, he's said, no, I'm here. I'm staying home. Let him say I'm in my basement. I'm running the campaign, but I'm being careful. I'm off by myself. And it's every time he speaks, he says the same kind of thing. He's very much on message, saying that the president has botched COVID, has made us not safe and all this stuff. So we already see how the thing that would make him susceptible to getting COVID, he's already been doing in a very empowering way. This is the way I read this. Now, again, it still does make him susceptible to it. That possibility is there, of course. Because again, Mars, his ruling planet in the 12th, does show things like hospitals, quarantining, and all of that in an unhealthy way. So, but I think for the people, he's going to be doing some campaigning. He's apparently getting tested a lot. Again, he's under a risk for sure. You can see the risk. But my feeling is he's going to be as cautious and prudent as he has been so far. He's not going to be reckless about it. And that's my feeling. Now, I also want to look in the Navamsha chart here. Let me take another drink. Because this is where you see the luck or the grace of the planet. So when you look in the Navamsha chart, the D9, now it is the spouse chart as well, but you see he's got Jupiter exalted in the D9, which shows how good his career has been since then. As you see, if you go up, he started in 2006, so his career really took off 2006, even though he was, 68 or something? What is it? 2006, he would have been 64, 60 something. I can't add anymore. 64, yeah. Even though he's 64, he became vice president of the United States because his Jupiter is very powerful. So his Jupiter dasha is great for the career. and great for his luck. I mean, you can see that in the dasha, in the navamsha for sure. It shows grace and impact coming through his work. But then Rahu is also very powerful. It's in the 9th house in Gemini where it's strong, and it's also joined Mercury, the ruler. It's also joined Saturn. The ascendant in the D9 is Libra. So look how powerful Rahu is also to deliver on winning an election and winning and ascending. Rahu is with the ruler Mercury, forms a Raja Yoga there with Saturn, because Saturn is the 4th house ruler in the 9th. So Rahu is in the 9th house with the Lord of Saturn, the angle. It also forms a Raja Yoga with the moon, the 10th Lord. So again, you have the 10th Lord also in the 9th with Rahu. So Rahu is just showing so much luck in the D9. And again, if we're looking specifically at the career achievements as well, Rahu is in the ascendant of the D10. So again, it's quite powerful here. But the Navamsha you just look at for overall luck as well. So again, I'm sort of pivoting a little bit here, but you can see the kind of luck that we have in the D9 and the grace, how much grace we have. If we're looking at this Rahu here, it shows enormous grace because it's got all this power up here in the 9th house with the ruler, and it's even aligned with all of these career planets. This is why he's had a very blessed career. You can look at overall blessings from the D9. If you want to look at the accomplishments and the achievements in the work, in the career, and whether you get the job or get the goal, then you look straight into the D10. But again, the D10 already shows that he can win because he's got Rahu in the ascendant. There's no question. That means you could definitely win. So, but you look at the D9 for overall merit and overall, where your luck flows. So he's got a lot of luck flowing based on the D9 chart. And so you can see up here, especially with with his faith and with his work and stuff. But most particularly, if we're looking at the luck we would expect to see to not get sick, to not get ill, to not do stupid things in Jupiter Rahu. Because this is the other way that Rahu hurts us, is we do stupid things. We're not paying attention. And again, in the natal chart, his Rahu is in Leo in the 10th house. It's not the most highly dignified place, but for the most part, it's in Magha Nakshatra, and at a certain point in time, Rahu matures. He's well past the maturity age of Rahu. But again, because it rules this Lagna Lord in the 12th, that's the part that's concerning. And it's most concerning because he might do something stupid, might not be thinking, might do something impulsive and reckless. So what I'm doing is looking at how impulsive and reckless has he been since Jupiter Rahu, in order to do something that might endanger his health. And again, as I've said, instead of doing that, he's done just the opposite. He's actually been doing the things that this Rahu ruling the Lagna Lord in the 12th would do in an intelligent way, which is, I'm going off in quarantine to be safe. I don't care if people are saying things about me. This is the right thing to be doing right now for everybody, and that's what he's been doing. If we look in the D9, we can also see why he has the wisdom to do that, because his Rahu, very powerful in the D9. It might be the most powerful planet in the D9. In fact, it probably is. Because it's as far as what makes Rahu powerful, this is about as much as it gets. Rahu is forming Raja Yogas with all these planets up here. That's what makes Rahu very strong. And nothing can deliver the results like Rahu, especially sudden, out of the blue, unexpected, which is what Biden's candidacy has been. Nobody thought he was going to be doing this 6 months ago. He looked like he was finished. All of a sudden, bam, that's totally Rahu energy. So you can see how powerful that is. So again, the third level is Jupiter. So it's Jupiter, Rahu, Jupiter. And again, this is the other reason why I'm looking at Jupiter here in the D9. I'm looking to see how much merit and grace is flowing with these planets. And they're both really powerful in the D9. If we look at Trump and look at his third level, again, we just looked at it. He's Jupiter, Saturn, Mars. And again, look at his Mars in the Navamsha chart. It's in the 12th. Bam. Not as good. So again, we're looking at the third level here. This is his Navamsha. Look at his Mars. This is his third level dasha planet of when he got COVID. Mars goes into the 12th. You see, this is exactly the same kind of 12th house energy I was just talking about. And again, I didn't look at this before we started, but I'm looking at it now. His Jupiter is retrograde in the 3rd in Leo. Rahu has joined the Sun in the 4th. Or no, he's in Jupiter Saturn. Okay, his Saturn is in the 2nd house with Venus, so they're Vargotama here. But the other thing, if you got to look at this in the Navamsha chart, Saturn. This is also a Vargotama, but it's also what's called a Marika house. The 2nd house is the death house. It's literally the 2nd and 7th and 8th houses. So anyway, if you're looking at the same kind of luck, the same kind of correlation between Trump's Navamsha and his dasha planets. Again, I'm looking at the dasha planets here. This is how you use harmonic charts, by the way. It's a case study. So those of you who just want to hear politics, the reason I do this also is because I'm showing astrology with current events. Now, it's a popular current event, so a lot of people are watching, but this is how you do it, okay? This is the main way you use harmonic charts. Mainly, I think, the most accurate, streamlined way is you got to check dasha planets and karmas at that time, because these are the karmas that people are getting now. So when I'm looking at someone's health who just got sick, I'm going to look at the things I did in the previous Trump videos, and I look into the Navamsha chart as well, and see, okay, these are the dasha planets he's running: Jupiter, Saturn, Mars. Jupiter retrograde in the third house is not beneficial. Saturn is in the 2nd house with Venus. It's not that bad. It's more average, but Saturn is also the 8th lord here. It's also the 9th lord. It's more on the average, but then the third level planet, which becomes important with an acute illness, the 3rd level becomes important. His 3rd level dasha Mars goes into the 12th house. And that's not good, particularly because the illness just started and it's going to be going for a few more weeks. Then he goes into Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu. But again, Biden, if we look at 3 levels, Jupiter, Rahu, Jupiter. I just looked at Rashi, but if I look in the Navamsa, Jupiter, it's retrograde, but it's exalted. Very important. It's an exalted Jupiter retrograde. Again, retrograde is not, it's not so auspicious for health, for example, but when you look at Rahu, Rahu is really powerful up here by dignity and by association. So, and this is what I would say. And so I'm not reading comments. By the way, people are free to say them. I'm not responding to them, just because it's too distracting and this needs too much concentration. So. This is basically what I wanted to look at here, and I sort of glanced over it a little bit, but honestly, a lot of these things, I'm doing them live. I prepare, but I get the general stuff, and then I figure it out in real time. So we're kind of learning it together, frankly. And, so this Rahu joining, activating Mars in the 12th is concerning, but again, we've already seen him doing this since Jupiter Rahu started. So again, it's been producing his first lord in the 12th since the end of April, and we're seeing what it looks like. It's him from his basement, quote, getting criticism, being criticized for having the mask on his face. And by the way, also some other things. And because his story has gotten known a little bit more, this something else that is really poignant here, that shows something about Biden that we've come to know a little bit more, is, and we've seen this since the campaign, is his stuttering. And by the way, it's something that's sensitive to me because I also grew up with a really bad stuttering, much worse than that kid that was on at the Democratic convention, the video, and you saw Biden's compassion for the young kid who stutters and all of that. Of course, stuttering would have to do with Mercury as the Karaka, as the indicator. And you see his Mercury is also in the 12th house. And it's very close to this Mars in the 12th house as well. And so again, you look at this kind of, this disruption to speech. And since then, since this Jupiter Rahu started, we've also really gotten to know Biden through this kind of stuttering, the guy who stutters, and his and even some of his gaffes. People saying, okay, he gaffes, or his misstatements, or why he says something. Some of it is him, working around his stutter a little bit, why he tends to hesitate at times. By the way, I will tell you, and every stutterer who used to stutter a lot, can see it. I can see the things that he does to overcome the stutter, because people will do little things. He'll hesitate often and stop in mid-sentence because he's trying not to stutter. I see it all the time. I can tell when someone stutters, even used to stutter or works with a stutter, even if they never said it, because I can see him do it. A lot of now that's not his gaffes, that's not his mistakes or him saying weird stuff, but especially like his mannerisms. Like he'll start to say something and then he'll sometimes he'll look like he's confused and he's stopping and he's looking around. A lot of that is a stutterer trying not to stutter. I have to stop and take a breath and do little things to make a sort of rhythm happen. It's actually based on rhythm. That's why someone who stutters, they don't usually stutter when they sing. There's other things that will make it so we all learn little things to do to not stutter. If I went through one of these videos and every time I did one of those little things, I told you I just did it, you would be shocked. You'd be shocked at how present I have to be when I talk all the time to not stutter. So it happens all the time when someone stutters as bad as Biden used to. They do it all the time. So anyway, but this Jupiter Rahu, again, ruling planet in the 12th house. 12th house is also embarrassment and shame and wanting to hide because we're embarrassed. Again, this is the quality of the 12th house. So this is why his ruling planet is in the 12th house. So he's had to deal with all of these kind of things. Hospitals, embarrassment through stuttering, Mars, Mercury in the 12th house. Right? All of these things, it shows a big part of his nature. Look at how much of this has come out since since he started Jupiter Rahu. Look at how much of even just that part of his story has come out of has been made public. So it's just very interesting to look at that part, and even though this is the thing that is his sort of weakness and his vulnerability, and by the way, even just him making gaffes and him saying stupid things, this is also part of it, because his ruling planet Mars is in the 12th house with Mercury, and it's like, oh, here goes Joe again saying a bunch of crazy things that he didn't think through. So it's a character flaw as well, for sure. That's what the 12th house is, where we're kind of unconscious about things. And by the way, I also think it's unconscious about his personal space. And I haven't wanted to make a whole lot about these kinds of things because I don't really feel that politically charged up about either one of the candidates, although I don't want Trump to win. But if all of the stuff about Joe Biden being creepy and all, those videos are really hard to watch. But I've noticed this now, just as an observation. Watch if you've seen videos of him talking to the little boy who stutters as well. Joe Biden has this problem with personal space. Like, I don't think he understands. I think he encroaches on people's space. I don't think, in fact, I know it's not sexual all the time because you see him do it with other, like, grown-ups. He just kind of, it's weird. It's just weird. Like, you see him with the little boy stuttering. He, like, reaches down and he's like, hey, and he pulls him really close and puts his head right up to the little boy's head. It's just, it's gross. Now, again, people are saying he's a pervert and all this stuff. I don't get it. I don't get that. As you see his just weird weird body, creepy looking stuff, but it doesn't mean that's what he intends. But this is the kind of stuff that the 12th house is where we're unconscious, like this unconscious thing that we're doing. Now, again, he could have creepy sexual weird urges. I don't want to argue the point or anything like that, and I'm not at this point. All I'm doing is saying that I've noticed and seen this since this became a thing. He does it with reporters. I saw him do it. There's a video of him hugging Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton is like trying to get away, like, all right, Joe, we've hugged. And he just holds her like really close and like, how are you? How are you? He's like right in her face, and you see her like fine. Like, let go of me now. Like, again, it's like this weird kind of affection, creepy. Again, you're a little kid and you're glad that the old guy's trying to help you, but get out of my face. Like, it would drive me nuts if he acted that way. So all I'm saying, aside, and again, because we live in an age now where everything is, creepy Joe, pervert, pedophile, everything is so ridiculous. But I'm just pointing this out because I've noticed it now, having seen the videos, especially of the boy stuttering, of interviews of that he really just encroaches on space all the time in a very awkward, unconscious way. And that's what the 12th house is. The 12th house is where we're unconscious about something, where we're not really thinking about it. And again, he's got his ruling planet in the 12th house, and it's with Mercury. And again, Mercury is also affectionate, communicating, talking. So again, you see the stuttering, the weird boundaries. 12th house doesn't have good boundaries. So I'm pointing these things out also because we're seeing him and Jupiter Rahu dasha right now. We've been seeing it. So again, this is kind of just a bit of a deep dive with whether or not I think he's going to get COVID, which I don't. I can see the danger. But I also think just about this, just by the behavior that we've already seen. Listen, at this point, I mean, we also just have to be honest. And I know there are people that just hate when I say this about Trump, but Trump is the most protected person in the world. And he's just flaunted all of this. In some ways, it's kind of hard to get COVID at this point. We already know what we need to do, and Biden does it. And he's been doing it to the ridicule of like a lot of the cool people, the woke people. Oh, Biden, he's part of the problem and all this stuff, wearing his mask, coming out right away wearing masks, always wearing masks, to people ridiculing him. Look, it's not like that's going to cure everything, no, because if you're around somebody who's ill, the mask isn't protecting you, it's protecting others. But Biden has shown an extremely healthy respect, not just for the virus, but for setting an example, which again is the other thing that a president or presidential candidate should be doing. We've gotten far away from it now, but he's not going to just stop doing that. He's not going to just stop taking precautions, setting an example. And in that world that we live in now, we can pretty much, for the most part, really minimize the risks of getting it and spreading it. And so I think he's just going to keep doing that. So this is what I think, because it's a real concern, and the way I'm looking at it here, especially since I already see him modeling the empowering and powerful part of his Jupiter Rahu. He's already doing it in the most empowered way that we would expect. And again, we've also seen the weird part of it too, and it's weird. And Rahu is where we're weird, notice in this Jupiter Rahu dasha, this stuff has come out so much more, right? And he's got to learn this too. It's like never too late to learn that you're acting creepy, dude. Stop. Or that you need to censor yourself. You can't just run at the mouth. So we're also seeing that as well in real time. But given the fact that he's already doing these things powerfully, and especially his Navamsha as well, I don't think that's going to happen. And his dashas and whatnot look good for winning. They really do. I mean, again, he's not only has Jupiter, exalted in Navamsha, it's exalted in the Rashi chart. Again, his Jupiter dasha, great for his career. He became vice president. Rahu, again, is in the 10th house. In the Rashi chart, as far as for winning is concerned, he could definitely win. There's no question. It's ruling that here, and it also, again, rules K2 in the 4th, which shows change of residence. Change of residency, it shows it. And it rules that ruling planet in the 12th. So again, that's the concerning part. So we see him doing it now, but again, it could also mean that once he wins election and he becomes the president, that maybe he'll be in the White House. He'll be, quote, sequestered away and out of precaution and those kinds of things. All of that can be shown. But I don't think he's going to get it. And it's a good astrological case study, which is really what these things are underneath it all. We have the intrigue of politics, so people are watching. But for me, I do these case studies all the time anyway. The fact that it's in the backdrop of politics, it's a good excuse for me to show how these things work and why I'm saying what I'm saying. And it's interesting here, again, I don't do a lot of these, I don't plan a lot of these things. I say I'm going to talk about it, then I start talking. Like, I didn't plan this dasha, and this comparison to Biden and Trump's charts here is really telling. This is the person who got COVID in Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and look at these planets in the Navamsha. Very different. Jupiter's retrograde in the third house, which is not an auspicious house. Saturn is in America, and in particular, that third level planet is in the 12th house. And Mars is a functional malefic here for Gemini. This is a Gemini ascendant. This is really not a good planet to be trying to fight off an illness. Again, another indicator of how this is no joke for Trump. It's the 6th and 11th Lord in the 12th here. Well, it's the 6th Lord in the 12th, so that is a Viparit Yoga. But again, it's still showing this difficulty. And with Biden, his dasha planets are much stronger. Again, Jupiter is also exalted here in the D9 when you're looking at the strength, but particularly Rahu here is very powerful in the D9. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I hope this was helpful. So you all have a good Sunday.